The wind howled a dirge through the jagged teeth of the Rocky Mountains, a sound as old as the peaks themselves. It was the winter of 1888, and the world was a canvas of white, brushed with the stark silhouettes of frost-rimed pines. Harlan Pike, a man etched by the very mountains he called home, watched the blizzard descend from his crude but sturdy cabin. Smoke curled lazily from its stone chimney, a beacon against the encroaching gloom. He was a sentinel of Eagle Pass, a dangerous defile known to few, and a route even fewer dared to traverse in the depths of winter. His face, weathered like ancient rock, held eyes that missed nothing, reflecting the harsh beauty and unforgiving nature of his solitary existence. He stirred the embers in the hearth, the only warmth against the biting cold that seeped into every crevice of the world outside. The silence of the falling snow was a deceptive blanket, muffling all sounds until only the roar of the wind remained. Suddenly, a flicker of movement against the churning white. Harlan, his senses honed by years of wilderness survival, instinctively reached for the Winchester propped by the door. A figure, small and hunched against the gale, stumbled into view. It was a woman, barely visible beneath layers of travel-worn clothing and a heavy fur-lined hood. She moved with a desperate urgency, each step a testament to sheer will, battling the drifts that swallowed her legs. As she drew closer, Harlan saw the dark bundle clutched tightly in her arms. He lowered his rifle, but his gaze remained sharp, assessing. The mountains had a way of delivering the unexpected, but a lone woman in this storm was beyond explanation. The woman, CLARA HALE, finally collapsed just yards from the cabin door, the strength abandoning her with the sight of shelter. Harlan approached cautiously, his boots crunching on the pristine snow. He saw the raw fear in her wide, dark eyes, but also a steel-hard resolve that surprised him. "You shouldn't be out here, miss." Harlan's voice was a low growl, rough with disuse. "Not in this storm." Clara struggled to rise, clutching the bundle tighter. I have to reach Denver. It's urgent." Her voice was thin but unwavering, each word punctuated by a gasp for breath. Harlan grunted, a skeptical sound. "Denver's 3 days' ride on a good horse, and you're on foot. And this ain't a good storm. This is a killer." He gestured to the swirling chaos around them. "No one comes through Eagle Pass in this kind of weather, not unless they got a damn good reason or they're running from something worse." Clara met his gaze, her exhaustion warring with a fierce determination. "I have a reason, a good one, and I am running, from men who would stop at nothing to get what I carry." She lifted the bundle slightly, revealing a glimpse of worn leather and tightly bound papers. Harlan's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. "Papers, you say? Enough to risk your life for?" He looked her up and down, taking in her threadbare coat, the deep circles under her eyes, the set of her jaw. She was no ordinary traveler. "Come in. You'll freeze out here, and I ain't one for finding frozen corpses on my doorstep." He held the door open, the warm glow of the fire spilling out into the swirling snow. Clara hesitated, her gaze sweeping over his imposing figure, the rifle still within easy reach. The suspicion in his eyes was palpable, but so was the grim offer of sanctuary. With a final, weary sigh, she stumbled inside, bringing with her the chilling breath of the storm and a scent of desperation. As night deepened, the blizzard raged with renewed fury. The cabin, a tiny haven in the vast hostile wilderness, shuddered under the onslaught. Inside, the crackle of the fire and the low murmur of the wind through the eaves were the only sounds. Harlan sat opposite Clara, meticulously cleaning his rifle, the rhythmic click of the mechanism a counterpoint to the storm. Clara, wrapped in a coarse wool blanket Harlan had given her, huddled by the hearth, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames. The steam rising from the tin mug of weak coffee Harlan had provided was a small comfort. "What's your name, miss?" Harlan finally broke the silence, his voice devoid of any discernible emotion. "CLARA HALE," she swallowed, her throat still raw from the cold. And you are Harlan Pike, if I'm not mistaken." Harlan merely grunted, acknowledging the truth. "How'd you know that?" "Word travels even up here," Clara replied, a hint of weariness in her tone. "They say you guard this pass, that no one gets through without your say-so, or your help." "Some say that. Others say I'm just a hermit. Either way, it means I know who comes and goes, and I ain't seen you before." He put the rifle down, his gaze piercing. "Now, about those papers. What's so important that you'd risk everything for them? And who are these men you're running from?" Clara hesitated, weighing her options. Trust did not come easily in these mountains, nor did it seem to be a commodity Harlan Pike readily dispensed. But the storm outside was an unyielding force, and she was at his mercy. "There, evidence," she began, her voice gaining strength. "Evidence of corruption, bribery, land fraud, men in high places, railroad barons, politicians, all conspiring to steal land, resources, futures from honest folk. I patted the bundle. This proves it. I worked for one of them, a lawyer named Caldwell. I saw the ledgers, the forged documents. When I tried to expose it, they came for me." Harlan watched her, his expression unreadable. "And you think these papers will change anything?" He scoffed softly. "This world ain't much for justice, miss. Not when there's money to be made." "Perhaps not, but I have to try." Clara's eyes flashed with a fierce conviction. "My father lost everything to men like them. He always said, the truth might be slow, but it always catches up. I believe him." A shadow crossed Harlan's face, a ghost of a memory. He looked away, staring into the flickering fire. "My family, we were farmers back in Ohio, lost our land to a railroad scheme. A man came, promised us fortunes, then bought us out for a pittance. Said it was for progress. My pa fought it, but he lost everything. Died a broken man a year later." He paused, the words heavy in the air. "I came west after that, to get away from it all, to find a place where a man could be free of their games." He looked back at Clara, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "So, you're not just trying to clear your own name, you're fighting for something more." Clara nodded, her gaze steady. "It's bigger than me. It's about right and wrong, about holding powerful men accountable." The silence that followed was different now, laced with a shared understanding, a quiet recognition of common ground. The storm howled outside, a constant reminder of the external dangers, but within the small cabin, a fragile connection had begun to form between the mountain man and the determined young woman. As the night wore on, the storm showed no signs of abating. The wind shrieked like a banshee, rattling the small window panes, threatening to tear the very cabin from its foundations. Harlan, ever vigilant, rose and checked the locks, reinforcing the door with a heavy wooden beam. He then returned to his seat, picking up a whetstone and carefully sharpening his hunting knife. Clara, feeling a strange sense of relief in the shared silence, finally unburdened herself of the bundle. She placed it carefully on the small wooden table between them. The firelight cast long, dancing shadows, highlighting the intricate bindings of leather and canvas that protected the precious contents. "These are copies," she explained, her voice hushed as if the very walls might be listening. "Ledgers, land deeds, signed agreements, everything Caldwell had. He was meticulous, foolishly so. He kept originals in a safe, but I had access to his office, his clerks. I spent weeks secretly copying everything by hand." She pointed to a faint smudge on a forefinger. "Ink stains, proof of my tireless nights." Harlan leaned closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. He saw the intricate script, the precise columns of figures, the names of powerful men he vaguely recognized from distant newspapers. "So these papers connect them all," he murmured, not a question, but a statement of realization. Clara nodded. "They trace the money, the shell corporations, the fraudulent claims. It all leads back to a man named Silas Thorne.
He's the architect of it all, building an empire on stolen land and shattered lives. Harlan's gaze drifted from the papers to Clara's face, a complex emotion in his eyes. Thorne, he repeated the name, tasting it. I've heard that name before. He's connected to the railroads, ain't he? Big money. He paused, a flicker of something dark passing through his expression. My pa, he went up against a man like Thorne once, never stood a chance. Clara's heart ached for the unspoken pain in his voice. That's why this matters, she insisted gently, because men like Thorne believe they're above the law. They think they can simply bury the truth and those who seek to expose it. She looked him directly in the eye, but they didn't count on someone like me or someone like you. Harlan's jaw tightened. He picked up one of the brittle, yellowed papers, his calloused thumb tracing the neat script. The details of the fraud, the brazenness of it all, resonated with a deep-seated anger he had long thought dormant. He remembered his father's quiet dignity, broken by the machinations of unseen, powerful forces. He remembered the desperate gleam in his mother's eyes as they packed their few remaining possessions, leaving behind generations of family history. The papers in Clara's bundle were not just ink on parchment, they were a testament to the destruction of lives, a story he knew too well. A heavy silence descended, filled with the roar of the blizzard and the ghosts of the past injustice. The morning brought no respite. The blizzard, if anything, had intensified, burying the world in an even deeper blanket of snow. The cabin was a mere bump in a landscape of white, lashed by winds that howled with renewed ferocity. Harlan had spent the pre-dawn hours outside, checking his traps, a necessary chore even in the direst weather. He returned, shaking snow from his heavy coat, his face grim. "They're coming," he stated, his voice low and gravelly as he stomped the snow from his boots. Clara, who had been dozing fitfully by the fire, sat bolt upright. "Who?" "Thorne's men," Harlan clarified, his eyes scanning the horizon through a narrow slit in the reinforced window. "Saw their tracks down by the lower ridge, fresh. They're moving fast, even in this. They ain't stopping for nothing." He pointed to a faint, dark smudge on the distant snow-covered slope, barely visible through the swirling snow. "They probably picked up your trail before the heaviest snow hit. They know you're up here, and they know you're heading for Eagle Pass." A cold dread gripped Clara's stomach. "How many?" "At least 3, maybe 4, Harlan replied, loading his rifle with practiced ease. "Well armed, too, by the looks of their stride. They're professional. Mercenaries, probably. Thorne ain't sending no amateurs for this." The reality of her situation and the danger she had inadvertently brought to Harlan settled heavily upon Clara. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. Harlan merely grunted, checking the action of his rifle. "Don't apologize, miss. You're doing what's right, and I've got my reasons for being involved now." He looked at her, his expression hard, but with a flicker of respect. "They'll be here by sundown, maybe sooner if this storm breaks a bit. We can't stay here. This cabin ain't meant for a siege." He began to gather supplies, a small leather satchel for the papers, a pouch of dried meat, his hunting knife, and a worn but sturdy rope. "We'll use the northern ridge. It's a longer route, treacherous, but it'll give us some cover and a better chance of losing them in the storm." Clara watched him, a knot of fear tightening in her chest, but also a renewed surge of determination. She had come too far, risked too much to turn back now. The thought of those men relentlessly pursuing her sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. They weren't just after the papers, they were after her. She clutched the bundle tightly, its weight a reminder of the monumental task ahead. The storm outside seemed to mirror the turmoil within, a furious battle against overwhelming odds. Clara and Harlan battled their way through the deepening snow, the wind whipping at their clothes and tearing at their resolve.
The northern ridge was a cruel mistress, its icy slopes and narrow ledges testing their every step. Harlan, with his years of experience, led the way, cutting a path through the drifts, his powerful frame a shield against the worst of the wind for Clara. She followed in his footsteps, each breath a struggle against the freezing air, the bundle of papers clutched protectively to her chest. As they neared the most exposed section of the ridge, a treacherous, wind-swept precipice overlooking a sheer drop, Harlan suddenly stopped, holding up a gloved hand. He listened, his head cocked, his eyes scanning the swirling white. "Wolves," he whispered, the sound barely audible above the gale. "They've picked up our scent." Clara's blood ran cold. The thought of Thorne's men was terrifying, but the raw, primal hunger of wolves in a blizzard was a different kind of fear entirely. Then another sound, fainter but unmistakable, the distant crack of a rifle shot carried on the wind. "They're closing in," Harlan said, his voice grim. "From both sides. We're caught." He peered down the ridge, then back up. No time to double back. There's only one way out of this, Clara. He turned to face her, his eyes serious, unwavering. "This ridge, it's too exposed. I can hold them off for a while, but not both at once, not with you here." He gestured to a narrow, snow-choked fissure in the rock face just behind them. "That leads down to a lower path. It's rough, but it's hidden. You take the papers. You go. Now." Clara stared at him, horror dawning in her eyes. "No, I can't leave you. We go together." "There is no we in this, Clara," Harlan countered, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "The papers are what matter. The truth. You said it yourself." He reached out, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "This is the only way you survive, the only way those papers see the light of day. You have to trust me." He was asking her to abandon him to a fight he might not win, to walk away into the jaws of the storm alone, while he faced down desperate men and hungry wolves. The moral weight of the decision pressed down on her, a crushing burden. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of terror and terrible choice. But then she looked at the bundle in her arms, at the weight of all those stolen lives, all those broken promises. She saw her father's face etched with despair, and she saw Harlan Pike, a man who had chosen to stand for what was right, even when it meant risking everything. "Go," Harlan urged, pushing her gently towards the fissure. "Don't look back, just run." With a desperate cry that was swallowed by the wind, Clara stumbled forward, plunging into the narrow crevice. She cast one last anguished look back. Harlan stood on the exposed ridge, his rifle raised, a lone figure against the swirling white, his silhouette defiant against the approaching storm and the encroaching menace. The first wolves, gaunt and spectral, emerged from the blizzard-ravaged trees, their eyes gleaming with predatory intent. Then the dark forms of Thorne's men appeared on the opposite side of the ridge, their rifles spitting fire, the cracking reports almost lost in the howl of the wind. Harlan returned fire, a steady, measured rhythm, a desperate defense against overwhelming odds. Clara watched, her tears freezing on her cheeks as the battle began. Then she turned and ran, the precious bundle clutched even tighter, leaving Harlan Pike to face his fate alone on the unforgiving